Hey there, thank you for being here. It's the first week of February, and that means it's time for the monthly Cape Coral Real Estate Market Update video. If you're unfamiliar with these, I do one of these every single month. These are in addition to the weekly videos I put out, but basically what we're going to do here today is really go with a fine-tooth comb through all of the statistics and the information that the Cape Coral real estate market has put up in the last month. So we're mainly going to be focused on the numbers that came in from January. We're talking about January of 2025. So I'll give you some overview of what we did in January 2025, and then I'll break things down by individual categories, and we'll talk about off-water single-family homes. We'll talk about, of course, Gulf access homes. We'll talk about condos, and we'll even touch on vacant residential lots as well. And then I'm going to wrap things up with some advice for buyers if you're a buyer in this Cape Coral real estate market, and then some advice if you happen to be a seller in this Cape Coral real estate market. And this month it's all about inventory. I'm going to share with you some numbers on our inventory. We had a really significant increase in inventory, meaning active listings on the market in this past month. So we're going to get into that in just a second. But if you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I'm a longtime resident of Cape Coral, Florida, and I've been a full-time real estate broker here in Cape Coral for almost 20 years now. And I do one of these videos, like I said, every month. But these are in addition to weekly videos that I put out on just some really good information regarding Cape Coral and Southwest Florida. Sometimes we're looking at some really unique or really striking listings that are available out there, or sometimes we're just talking about really good informational topics like flood insurance, things like that. So if you're somebody that's interested in Southwest Florida, maybe you're considering a move to Cape Coral or move to Fort Myers or something like that, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be here for these videos every single week. I just try to create a lot of value and give you a lot of good information in the hopes that when it does come time and you do need a realtor here in Southwest Florida or Cape Coral, that you think of me and you reach out. And of course, my contact information is right there on the screen, but it's also down in the description of this video. Call, text, or email me anytime. You can also reach me on WhatsApp if you're maybe somebody that's international. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the Cape Coral real estate market update. I always start these videos off just for fun by showing you the highest and the lowest sales of the month in a few different categories. So let's start off with the lowest sales of the month of January 2025. Okay, so the lowest sales of the month, we're talking about January 2025. Let's start out with the lowest condo sale. Again, this is the entire city of Cape Coral for the entire month of January. The lowest condo that sold last month is this one right here. It's 3961 Pomodoro Circle, Unit 203. That's in the Isles of Porta Vista condo community over there. It's in the corner, the northeast corner of Cape Coral, right there on right off of US 41. So a decent location, close to everything certainly. And these condos aren't terribly old. They were built in 2006, and 1,270 square feet was this condo. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and didn't look like it was in too bad a shape. I do know that it needed a new HVAC system, an AC system, and probably needed some updates and maybe some carpet or something like that inside there. But overall, it looked like a pretty decent unit. And that's probably why it sold in 7 days. It was listed at $135,000. It sold full price in just 7 days. So maybe they got a little bit aggressive on the pricing there, and it paid off with a very quick sale. But nevertheless, congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. $135,000 is a darn good price for any condo, even in today's a little bit softer market. So congratulations to the buyers and the sellers on that beautiful condo in Isles of Porta Vista. Let's look at the lowest single-family home that sold in the month of January 2025. We're staying up in the Northeast. This one's at 931 Northeast 23rd Terrace. It's just off of Kismet up there. Decent location, still close to everything, but again, that is well in septic territory out there. And this was a little bitty home built in 1985. It was only 1,150 square feet. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It looked like it needed some work, certainly inside. I mean, it had to have. But actually, this one was listed at $200,000, and it sold in 14 days for $150,000. So pretty significant discount. But the real problem with this property was the zoning on the land that it sits on was changed over to commercial, and that obviously creates some issues for buyers that are maybe trying to get financing But nevertheless, it was a little bit of a distressed sale, and it closed at $150,000. We haven't seen too many single-family homes close under that $200,000 mark in the last year or so. Even the ones that had fire damage and things like that, we haven't seen too many of them get under that $200,000 mark. And I think this one may have been a framed home, a wood frame. Yeah, it was a wood framed home as opposed to a concrete block home, and those generally sell for a little bit less anyway. But hey, $150,000, you can have a lot wrong with the property and buy it for $150,000 and still be into it pretty well. So congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. That looks to be a pretty good deal there off of Kismet in the Northeast Cape. All right, let's talk about the lowest Gulf access home that sold this past month. We had a couple months where Gulf access homes, we had a 2 or 3 that got under the $400,000 mark. Didn't happen in the month of January. We didn't get underneath $400,000, and this one was the lowest Gulf access home that sold last month. It was in the Southeast Cape, 3306 Southeast 6th Place. It's over there by Country Club Boulevard. It's actually near that place. It was the old Cape Coral Country Club, and actually the city just agreed to buy that, and they're going to make it into a really nice green space or park or something like that. So it's a good area over there. But this Gulf access home was listed at $470,000. It was on the market for 19 days before it sold, and it finally sold for $420,000. So again, pretty strong discount. There was obviously something that came up in the inspection report on that one for that big of a discount right out of the gate like that. But nevertheless, it was a decent sized property, just under 2,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 1984. That is in the flood zone over there, I believe. But it did have a brand new roof and a new screen cage, or the screen cage was only a couple years old. But hey, $420,000, that's $210 a square foot. That's insanely cheap for a Gulf access home, even in today's a little bit softer priced market. So congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. $420,000 for a nearly 2,000 square foot Gulf access home here in Cape Coral. Pretty decent. So congrats to those folks. All right, let's get over to the fun ones. That's the highest sales of the month of January 2025. All right, so the highest sales, we'll start off with the highest condo sale. Again, we'll kind of follow the same pattern we did on that last one, but highest condo sale of the month was once again over there in Tarpon Point Marina and Tarpon Landings, the high rises over there. It's near where the Westin is, if you're familiar with that, in the southwest section of Cape Coral. 6021 Silver King Boulevard, Unit 301. It was listed for a while. It was listed at $1.55 million. It sold for $1.4 million in 224 days. So it was on the market for a while, and I'm sure they made a couple of reductions on that. But this is, if you're not familiar with those Tarpon Point Marina condos over there, they're really super nice, larger condos overlooking some nice waterfront in the marina over there. This one was 3,048 square feet of living area there. It was a 3-bedroom plus a den, 4 baths, actually 3.5 baths. Built in 2007 is when those towers were built out there. And this one pretty consistently every month, as long as there's one selling in Tarpon Point Marina, it's usually the highest condo sale of the month. That high rise over there tends to be our high point. Sometimes we see some sell over there in Cape Harbor, some of the new developments they have over there in Cape Harbor. But pretty consistently, when we're above $1 million, it's usually over there on Silver King Boulevard in Tarpon Point Marina. So this was obviously an incredibly nice luxury turnkey condo, and congrats to the buyers and the sellers and their agents, for that matter, on the high condo sale last month at $1.4 million. Okay. Let's do the highest off-water sale. This is the highest single-family home that's not on a body of water, so not a Gulf access, not on freshwater canals or anything like that. And this one's also in the Southwest. This one's pretty close to Cape Harbor, actually, 2110 Southwest 50th Lane. This is a brand new construction house, 4-bedroom plus a den, 3 and 2 half baths, so 5 bathrooms. Just over 2,600 square feet of living area. Again, it's not on the water, but it had a super nice outdoor living space with a pool and everything like that. And this house was listed at $990,000. Sold in 19 days, pretty close to list price, $970,000. So obviously that was a pretty impressive property for it to sell as quickly as it did, as close to list price. Yeah, just a really nice luxury property, brand new construction over there in a great area of the Southwest Cape. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. Highest single family home not on a body of water, $970,000 last month. All right, let's finish up with the highest single family home period, the highest Gulf access single family home. Actually, this is the first time since I've been doing this in the last year and a half that the highest single family home was not well well higher than the highest condo. And the highest single family home last month, again, was in the Southwest Cape, 5933 Southwest First Court. That's down there just south of Rotary Park. It's basically a riverfront house right there on the end. This house was listed at $1.599 million, and it wasn't even on the market a day. It has 0 days on market. It sold 6 days after they put the agent put this in the MLS. It sold for $1.35 million. So evidently it seems that they may have had this deal together before they even listed the property. Not sure what's going on with that, but it's a killer deal for that location over there. It was a 3,300 square foot home, 5 bedrooms, 3 and 1/2 baths, built in 2003. It was a 2-story property with a beautiful tile roof. A lot of nice stuff inside there, and sold at a decent discount off that list price. Again, it was not really on the market at all. Looks like the agent was the one that represented the buyer, so in all likelihood they had that deal figured out before they hit the MLS. But nevertheless, congrats to the buyers and the sellers on that one. 1.35 million was the highest single family home sale, and that didn't quite reach what our high condo was at 1.4. Kind of surprising. You know, we've only had a couple of months in the last 18 months where we haven't hit the $2 million mark. So for the highest single family to be 1.35 in January, that's pretty atypical. In fact, most of the months we've had at least 1 or 2 listings close in excess of $3 million. So I'll fully expect to see, I'm cheating ahead a little bit, but for next month, stay tuned for next month's real estate market report, because there's one that went pending this past month at just under $5 million. So we'll see if that one closes and where it closes at, and I'll report back to you. So that'll be a pretty good closing. Inevitably, it'll be the highest sale maybe next month. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, those are the highest sales of the month of January for the entire city of Cape Coral. So let's go ahead and get into the statistics of the Cape Coral real estate market. I always start off with the general stats, and then we'll start to break things down and go a little bit more in depth on each one. So let's start with some general stats. All right, so again, we're going to start off with the broader statistics of the residential Cape Coral real estate market. We're not going to touch on any commercial or anything like that. So all of these statistics are mainly just residential, not even multifamily residential. It's mostly single-family homes, condos, townhomes, things like that. So residential Cape Coral real estate market, the total market last month, we'll start off with the total number of sales. And watching these videos, if you've watched them every single month, I've kind of prepped you for this, but January was always typically in any market pretty slow month. If you can kind of imagine, there's not a, the sales that we see in any given particular month are the result of homes that went pending the month before. So most of the sales that closed in January went pending in December. As you can imagine, there's not a whole lot of people shopping during the Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's season. They're busy doing things with family and things like that, and there are not as many people out there shopping for real estate. So it makes sense that our number of closings is usually the lowest in January, and that was the case here. So take a look at this 2-year chart. We only sold 297 residential units in Cape Coral last month. That's down from December's number of 390. So again, those were properties that most likely went under contract in November. So 297, and that's pretty on par with last year. We sold a few more last year. Actually, January of 2024, we sold 309 properties, but again, it was the low point for that year. And if you go back 2 years ago, which is where this chart starts, in January of 2023, 351 was the low mark for that year. So nothing to really be taken one way or the other about having a slow month in January. That's consistently the case in any given market. And if any indication of what I've been insanely busy over the last 3 weeks. I've been working 7 days a week, mostly with buyers. So there's a lot of buyers in this market. We're going to talk about the inventory here in a second because we got some inventory issues, but there's no shortage of buyers in this Cape Coral real estate market. So I'll bet you $1 that as we get into February and March, these sales numbers are going to pop up considerably. But 297 was the lows, the number of sales for the month of January 2025. If you look at this chart, actually the high point was last year in May. We sold over double that, 617. So we've still got a few really solid months ahead of us as we get into our main bulk of the winter and spring buying season. But 297 was the number of residential properties that sold last month. Let's talk about the median price for those. And again, so we're talking about the entire real estate market. We're talking about single family homes on water, off water, Gulf access, freshwater, condos, townhomes, all of that together. This is the entire Cape Coral residential real estate market. Median price right here is the 2-year graph. Median price $365,000 last month. That's down slightly from December's number of $375,600. We're down about a little over $10,000 from the previous month. But if you look, we've been descending very, very gently over the course of the last 18 or so months. And if you look back 12 months ago, back in January of 2024, the median price actually bumped up that month. Again, we had the lower number of sales, so sometimes it can vary a little bit more when we don't have as big of a sample size. The January 2024's number on this chart was 408,500, so we are down 11% from then. If you take that next month when we had a few more sales in February, that number went down to 400. So we're down about 8.75% in median price since February of last year. I think overall, you kind of take the averages of these out a little bit. We've had some lower months and some higher months, but obviously we're definitely down with all the inventory that's been out on the market. Prices have been a little bit soft, especially over the course of the last 12 months. And so I think that's a pretty good metric to use right there. Is somewhere around that 8% is where our overall Cape Coral real estate market has dropped in price since this time last year. The high point on this chart was in April of 2023. That's when the market peaked out. That was $410,000, which actually that's the number that I used that got me down to 11%. So we're down 11% from the actual high point. We're down just about 8.75% from this time last year. But you go back 2 years, January 2023, median price was $395. So we were still going up as we got into the beginning months of 2023, and then we really peaked out in spring of that year, and we've been just slowly descending ever since then. And that's mainly due not for a shortage of sales. We're still doing well as a market selling properties. We just have far too many properties on the market, and let's get into that. Let's talk about the inventory, which is obviously the number of active properties that were on the market in any given month. And here's the 2-year chart. Check this out. We had an absolutely staggering jump from December to January this year. And if you notice last year on this chart, you see that hill where we went up in 2023 and then came down as we got into the later months of last year in 2024. And we peaked out last year in April. There was 4,305 properties, active properties on the market in April of last year. And then we came down until about October. So I don't think that was because we were selling more properties than were out there. I think a lot of these properties came off the market as we got into the slower summer months, and with the intention of obviously putting those properties back on the market during our heavier season, which is basically the start of the new year. So I think that's why we went from December's number, which was 4,086 properties on the market, to January's number of 4,615. So we're up 9% from the high point of last year. Just here in January, we're up. Like I said, we're up 9%. And I should mention though, there's not 4,613 or 15 properties on the market right now. I just checked it before I started shooting this video. We have just over 3,900 active properties on the market in Cape Coral right now. This number, and I'm not real happy with how they take this metric, but this number is they're giving you all of the properties that had been active at one point or another in the market during the month of January. So that's why it's 4,615. Some of those came off the market, some of them went pending, some of them, were terminated, some of them expired, things like that. There's not 4,616 properties on the market. We're just shy of about 4,000. But nevertheless, the correlation is still there. 4,615 compared to the high point of last year, 4,305. So, I still think a lot of this was the inventory that went off the market as we got into the second and third quarter of last year, and now it's coming back active all at the same time. But we're going to keep a close eye on that. If that's a trend and we get, into February, March, and April, and it's still going up, we're in a little bit of a struggle here as a Cape Coral real estate market. I think this is going to be a really active buying season, even more so than last year. But we can't be having 4,600 properties out there in active inventory. That's just not sustainable without prices starting to slip. So we'll pay close attention to that. I expect February's number maybe up a little bit more from that, and then hopefully as we get into March, that number starts to go back down. But nevertheless, we need to keep a close eye on the inventory number. There's definitely too many properties out there, way too many overpriced properties. People really need to get serious about pricing their properties. If you're not showing, if you're listing a house and you're not showing that house, get the price down, or figure out how to do something else with it. Take it off the market. You're not helping out your neighbors by keeping that overpriced listing on the market. But that's the general statistics. Let's start to break these down by numbers, and we'll start off with the single-family off-water homes. So these are single-family homes that are not on any type of water, whether it's freshwater or Gulf access, lake, or something like that. Basically the largest segment of the Cape Coral real estate market. So let's get into off-water single-family homes. Okay, so we'll hold that same pattern that I just went through. We'll start off with the number of sales, then we'll talk about the median price and the inventory. But again, these are off-water single-family homes. It makes up the majority of our Cape Coral real estate market. Number of sales last month, keep in mind, what do we have? 295, I think, is what our sales were. 295 total sales for the entire Cape Coral Real. 297 for last month. 195 of those were these off-water single-family homes. Again, just a really slow month. January is traditionally in any market a slower month, just because of what we talked about with the holidays. Not many people shopping in the holidays, but December. We had 273 of these properties sell, so we took a big dip down to 195, but we actually sold more in January of this year than we did last year. Last year in January 2024, we only sold 188, and then 2 years ago we were coming out of the hurricane, but we still sold 235 of these properties 2 years ago. But again, the high point on this chart, pretty close. It's consistently May seems to be the high point for these off-water single-family homes. We sold 404 of them last year, so over double of what we did last month, and I expect we'll probably go in up higher than that number. We'll probably beat 404 this May, but it's pretty consistent 2 years ago. In May of 2023, there was 405. So 195 total sales in the month of January for off-water single-family homes. Now the median price for this category was $345,500. Again, we've seen kind of a slow, gradual decline in prices over the course of the last 12 or 18 months. $345,500 was January's number. That's down from December's number of $358,000. Did tick up in October. We were at $377,000 in October, but that was kind of an errant month. You see this kind of bounces up and down a little bit month to month. Again, you're talking about basically 200 properties. It's not a huge sample size, so it's going to kind of go up and down a little bit. So I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. But if you look back 12 months ago, January 2024, there was 300. The median price was $380,000. So we're roughly 9% down from this time last year. I think if you averaged out some of these ups and downs, I think it would probably be closer to 7 or 8%. I think that's what the market has corrected in the last 12 or so months. If you go back 2 years ago, again, we were still coming out of the hurricane at that point, but January 2023 was 357,300, and then it jumped up in February of that year to just under 385,000. So you know, whatever the actual number is, 12 or 18 months ago, we've definitely made a little bit of correction in pricing, and prices have definitely come down. And I expect we'll probably see. I don't think it's going to be a huge additional reduction in median price, but probably going to go down a little bit more with all those properties out there on the market. So we'll keep an eye on it. But obviously, we're in a softening market price-wise in this category. Let's take a look at the inventory, because again, the inventory is the same situation in this category as it is across the board. A little bit less so in this particular category, though. Take a look at this 2-year chart. So we're definitely at a high point in January 2025. There was 2,522 of these properties on the market. The high point otherwise on this chart was last year in April. Last April, we had 2,435. So we're up just very slightly, 3.6% from the high point, the previous high point last year in April. But if you look at this as a 1-year chart, going back 1 year to January 2024, there was only 2,268 of these properties on the market. So we're up a solid 11% in inventory in just 1 year. And then, of course, if you go back 2 years ago to January 2023, where there was really a shortage of listings at that point, and prices were still kind of ticking up, we're up 63% in inventory from 2 years ago. So we've got some work to do. This category is doing a little bit better. We'll see how the inventory does in the next couple of months. My guess is it may even go down a little bit. I think we just had a big spike in properties where people had taken them off last year with the intention of putting them on right after January the 1st. And that's why we had a pretty big spike. But we'll keep an eye on it just to see if anything happens with that. But hopefully those inventory numbers kind of just slow down and maybe even start to go back in the other direction as we get some more sales under our belt with the higher months of winter and spring. But that's the category of off-water single-family homes. Let's talk about everyone's favorite category, which is Gulf access single-family homes. We're well known in Cape Coral for our Gulf access properties. Basically what I'm talking about, if you're not familiar, is properties that are on a body of salt water. It's usually a saltwater canal or maybe the Caloosahatchee River, but saltwater access out to the Gulf of Mexico. So Gulf, G-U-L-F, not golf, Gulf access properties here in Cape Coral. Let's get into that. All right, so Gulf access homes, homes with access to the Gulf of America. Gulf of America now, right? So anyway, again, these are homes that are on a body of salt water here in the city of Cape Coral. This category always does better in the winter and spring months, basically in the first and second quarter of every year. As you can imagine, these are priced a little bit higher. They're a little more in demand from the folks that are a little more affluent, the folks that are retiring and moving here, the folks that are snowbirds and have some disposable income to buy a little bit more expensive property type. So we definitely see an increased amount of activity in the particularly the spring months. But let's follow that same scenario here. We'll start off with the number of sales again. This category, just like everything else, is slow in January. We only had 41 sales last month. Again, the last 2 years, January has been pretty low. I mean, if you look at this 2-year high, actually the highest number of monthly sales that we had for Gulf access homes occurred in May of last year, where we did 110. So that's well over double what we did this past month. But again, I'll bet you a nickel that as we get into February and March and April, this number is going to go way up. We've already seen a lot of pendings here in the first week of February. So folks are really starting to get under contract on these Gulf access homes and really everything across the board. We'll talk a little more about that when I get into the advice for buyers and sellers here at the end of this video. So make sure you stick around for that. But nevertheless, 41 sales last month. That was down from December's number of 49 sales. I mean, it's pretty plainly obvious when you look at this chart that our main active buying season for this category is in that late winter and early spring months. But let's take a look at the median price. Again, we don't have a huge sample size. We're talking about 41 properties last month. So this bounces up and down quite a bit, this median price does, because you can find properties in the 500s that are older homes, maybe farther from open water down in the southeast. And you can find homes that are, again, $2, $3, $4, $5 million plus dollars in for some new construction homes in some of the nicer areas of the Southwest or even the Southeast and the Northwest for that matter. So this can bounce around quite a lot, but median price for those 41 sales last month was $750,000. Here's the 2-year chart. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. This jumps up and down from month to month depending on what the sales actually happen. We don't have a big sample size, so it doesn't really stay consistent very much. But 750 was down from December's number of 800,000. And the high point on this chart, the highest median price has really ever been for Gulf Access single-family homes was last February. 852,000 was the high point for Gulf Access homes in the last 2 years in February of 2024. So, you know, you look at actually January of 2024, we were at 775,000. So we're slightly down basically from last year's number. I don't know if that's really a statistical, if that's a statistical error or not, but we're roughly down about 3.2% if you look at 775 last year to this year at 750 for the months of January. But again, this bounces up and down. My guess is we've got a 12 to 18 month price correction in Gulf Access homes of about 6 to 8%. That seems to be, if we kind of averaged all these months out, that seems to be the average Gulf Access home that sold 2 years ago is selling for roughly 6 to 8% less today than it did 2 years ago. So sometimes it's tough to push that, to pin that number down, but I think that's a pretty accurate representation of what's happening in the Gulf Access market. And again, you know, you've got different price categories for this, whether it's a property that was built in the 70s or 80s, it's obviously going to be going for a little bit less over there in the Southeast versus a brand new construction home in a super nice area of the Southwest over there by Cape Harbor or something. It's going to be, you know, $2+ million in some situations. So we'll keep an eye on this, but 750 was the median price. That's probably going to go up a little bit, honestly, as we get more of these sales under our belt. Some of the higher end sales tend to happen in the, again, the winter, late winter and spring months, but we'll keep an eye on it and see if that price softens any more than it already has. Again, we've got a lot of activity in the market right now, but we've also got a lot of inventory. And check this out. This is the inventory. 2 years of inventory. We had a huge run up and throughout 2023, the end of 2023, initially peaked out in February of last year, and we were doing a real good job of getting some of that extra inventory off the market as we got into the summer and fall months of last year. You can see that inventory really went down, and then we hit October, and 3 months in a row, boom, 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 went up, up, up. And especially from December to January, big spike. So we had 992 active properties on the market in January at some point last month. That's up from December's number of 865. And we're up about 9.6% from the high mark of last year in February. So again, I think a lot of these properties that didn't sell at the end of season last year came off the market, and these folks had the intentions the entire time of putting them back on the market when our main buying season for this property category came along. So January 2nd rolled around, boom, all these properties are on the market. So we've got way too many properties on the market at 992. We're up about, again, just under 10% from the high mark of last year. Again, I think that's going to level off. I think the properties that people had intentions of putting them on, they've put them on here as we got into January, and we're probably not going to see a big increase beyond that, and hopefully we'll see some direction, we'll see those numbers going in the other direction as we get a few more of these sales going. But we'll keep an eye on it. Stay tuned here every single month for this report. I'm going to give you the numbers every month for these Gulf Access homes. But 2 years ago, the low point on this chart, 472 properties were on the market during our shortage of inventory 2 years ago in January 2023. So we're up over double. We're up 110% from where we were 2 years ago, and still just a lot of overpriced properties out there on the market. Gulf Access is no exception. So we need to get some of those overpriced properties either priced right or off the market so we can get some of this inventory under control. But that's the long and short of the story with Gulf Access homes. So let's talk about condos and townhomes. And condos and townhomes have been a really difficult market for the last 12 or so months. So let's get into that. All right, so condos and townhomes. Again, I'm talking about everything. We're talking about high rises, low rises, mid-rise condos, townhomes, attached villas, basically anything that's not a single family home. And obviously, we're not talking about duplexes or things like that, but these are condos and townhomes. This category very much matches the Gulf Access category. Again, a lot of the buyers for condos are retirees, snowbirds, folks that are a little bit more active in the winter and spring months. So we generally see a lot more activity for condos in the first and second quarter of the year. And we usually see a pretty slow activity in January for reasons that I've already mentioned. But take a look at this 2-year graph of the number of sales. And again, these are the total number of condo sales. We only sold 35 condos in the month of January, which is very up slightly actually from December, though. We sold 33 in December. But if you look back in September, we only sold 15 condos in the entire city of Cape Coral in September of 2024. So we're doing a little better than we did a few months ago. And we're hoping, condo owners, condo sellers in particular, are hoping for a really strong buying season in the first and second quarter of this year. Typically, these condos, again, they're the busier seasons in, as we get into February, March, and April. The high point last year was in March. We sold 73 condos in March of last year. The previous year in 2023, March, we sold 75, which was the top month on this graph. But 35 total sales last month for condos and townhomes. Let's take a look at the median price, because again, this is going to bounce up and down quite a bit because, again, we're only talking about a sample size of 35 different properties, and those properties range from, two of those properties. One was the one that sold for $1.4 million, and the other one was one that sold for $135,000. So we've got a pretty large, substantial price difference in that sample size right there. But the median price last month was $259,000. Again, here's the 2-year graph, and this bounces up and down, but you can definitely see that trend very so gently going in the downward direction for pricing over the course of the last 18 or so months. The high point on this chart was April of 2023. That's when prices really kind of peaked out. And in April of 2023, the median condo price was $305,000, and now it sits at $259,000. So we're down about 15% from 18 or so months ago, April of 2023. It's maybe 20 months or so. If you look at this time last year, January of 2024, we were at 282. So we're definitely still down 8.2% from this time last year. So condos have shown a little bit more marked difference in that reduction in prices over the course of the last 2 years than a lot of these other categories. The reasons for that are a few different reasons, actually. Insurance costs have gone up, so monthly HOA fees have been going up. On top of the insurance costs, there are things like the new laws that were in place in the wake of the Surfside, Florida high-rise condo collapse that happened a few years ago. They changed the rules, and basically condos, any condo that's 3 stories and above, they're required to undergo periodic engineering inspections and things like that. They're also required to have reserves set aside for structural repairs specifically, and of course that's adding to these monthly or quarterly HOA fees going up. We had a pretty strong rise in condo fees when we went from 2023 to 2024. And as a result, that's putting more pressure on folks that own condos. Some of them are giving up their condos or trying to sell their condos. So we've got more activity. We've got more inventory on the market, and fewer folks are buying condos because, again, the monthly or quarterly fees are a little bit higher. But 12 months, we're down 8.2%. And $259,000 was the median price last month. That's up just slightly from December's number. December was $254, but again, we're raising and lowering on a given month-to-month basis just because we don't have a really substantial sample size. But let's go ahead and look at the inventory, because again, like I said, a lot of these condos come on the market this time of year. And here's the 2-year chart for active number of properties on the market at any given month. There were 550 condos on the market last month. That's a lot of condos to have on the market when you're only selling 35. 550 of them out there, and you're only selling 35. That's not a good sign if you're a condo seller. We peaked out last year. Again, throughout 2023 into the first few months of 2024, inventory was raising, and then we peaked out right actually in February of last year. There was 527 condos on the market. And then, we made some progress. We were going in the downward direction on the inventory front. But again, I think a lot of that was a little bit artificial. Folks were taking their properties off the market. They weren't necessarily selling them. They were taking them off the market with every intention of putting them back on the market as we got into season of this year, which is why we had that pretty remarkable spike in inventory as we went from December to January just a couple of months ago. So if you look at this, January of 2024, we had 484 condos. So we're up just 12 months, 13.6% in condo inventory. And of course, if you go back 2 years ago when the inventory was really lower than it needed to be, and that's why our prices were up, 287 properties were on the market back then 2 years ago in January 2023. So we're up a full 91.6% in inventory over the course of 2 years. So it remains to be seen. I think condos will do a little bit better this year than they did last year. We'll see if that hashes out. But I think the prices are getting to such a point now where we're seeing some more activity on the condo front, and people are feeling like they got a little bit better of a deal on them. So we've got a few more buyers in the market for condos. So we'll take a look at that. Again, I fully expect this inventory to be kind of flat in the next couple of months. Maybe it'll go up a little bit as we get into February and March, but I fully expect it to start coming back down. If it doesn't and it continues to go up, then we've got a little bit bigger issue on our hands here, at least for condo sellers, and prices will have to continue to soften a little bit. But 550 properties on the market, again, in the month of January. It's quite a lot for condos when you're struggling to sell condos right now. So that's all the categories I got. Actually, we're going to step over and do vacant residential lots real quick, and then we'll get into the advice for buyers and the advice for sellers. Okay, I'm going to briefly touch on residential vacant lots. We're mainly going to talk about non-waterfront lots. There's only a handful of Gulf access vacant lots that transferred last month. It's really not enough to mention. If you're interested in Gulf access lots, I'll be happy to share that data with you. I do have that data, and we can chat about what that market looks like right now. But there's just not enough sales to warrant covering it. So again, following the same pattern, let's talk about the number of sales. First of all, here's the 2-year graph, and sales have been consistently going down since spring of 2023. We had 91 total vacant lot sales in the month of January, virtually identical to what December's number was. We had 92 sales in December. But the high mark on this chart was March of 2023, when we had 190 vacant lot sales off water in March of 2023. So we are every bit basically at the halfway mark of where we were back then. And we don't really have the same inventory issue. We'll check that here in a minute. But let's talk about the median lot price. Again, these are non-waterfront lots. So we're basically talking off-water lots, and the majority of them are in the Northeast and the Northwest. There's just not a lot of lots left, vacant lots left in the Southeast and the Southwest. There's a few of them down there, but most of them have been built on already, whereas the Northeast and the Northwest, that's where some of our growth is pushing up into those areas. So we're seeing those areas sell quite a few more vacant lots than the Southeast and Southwest. But the median price has been pretty darn consistent for the last 2 years. Take a look at this graph. And last month, of those 91 sales, the median price was $45,000. That's down from December. We had a big spike for whatever reason in December. I think there was just a few more Southeast and Southwest lots that sold that particular month for whatever reason. So it was $50,000 was the median price in the month of December. So we're back down to 45. We've been pretty consistently around the mid 40s for the last at least 12 months. But in spite of what we saw in the other categories of move-in ready residential properties, we've seen lots actually tick up a little bit in the last 2 years. If you go back 2 years ago to January 2023, the median off-water lot price was $40,000, and now it's 45,000. But if you go back 12 months ago in January of 2024, it was also 45,000. So I think it's been pretty flat for the last couple of years. And I think there are several reasons for that, mainly being, folks are kind of in a holding pattern. The lot sellers, we've seen a lot of these lots stay out there for sale for 2 and 3 years plus in some situations. It's a lot easier to leave a lot out there on the market and just let it sit and pay the taxes on it versus, the folks that maybe need to lower that price on a residential property like a house or something like that. They need to get that sold a little bit quicker. These lot owners can afford to leave it out there and just leave their price there. And so we don't see these transfers. We don't see this downward pressure on the pricing for the lot market compared to the residential. I briefly talked about the different areas. So the Northeast and the Northwest, the vast majority of the lots up there are still on well and septic systems. And actually the median price for those areas up there north of Pine Island Road was $44,000, just under the overall median. And if you go to south of Pine Island Road, there's only a handful of sales that happened last month. But south of Pine Island Road, most of those properties are on central water and sewer. Some of the areas still have an assessment balance maybe on it. Some of the areas have the assessments paid off. But the median price south of Pine Island Road jumps up to $94,500. So the median price south of Pine Island Road, when they have those central utilities in, is over double what those areas that are still on well and septic are. So that's pretty interesting to note there. There's really a premium that's put on having those central utilities. And for the folks that are maybe worried that maybe live or have lots or property or something like that in the Northeast or the Northwest, and the assessments are moving into those areas, at least you can take solace that even though you're going to get hit with that $34,000 assessment that you can pay over the course of 20 or 30 years or something like that, your property value will immediately go up quite a bit, quite substantially, just for having that central water and sewer access in those areas. So definitely a premium to be had on properties that are on central utilities. Take a look at this inventory. This is the 2-year inventory chart for vacant off-water lots. It's going in the opposite direction, basically, as the residentials. And I think that's why these prices have been flat or maybe even ticked up a little bit in the last 2 years for the vacant lots, whereas it's been the opposite for these other residential categories. 2 years ago in January 2023, we had 1,797 vacant lots on the market. This past month in January 2025, there's only 1,269. That's very up slightly from 1,229 in the month of December, but it's been pretty flat over the course of the last 12 months. You go back to January 2024, there was 1,298 properties on the market. So it came down a little bit. It's bumped back up a little bit, but overall, the lot inventory has been pretty much under control, quite honestly. 1,269, that's a lot of properties to have on the market when only 91 are selling. But again, the lot market's a little bit different than some of these other residential categories. A lot of these properties just sit out there longer. Eventually they do sell, some of them close to list price. So that's why we are not seeing really too much movement in the median price for vacant off-water lots. But that's a story on lots. So let's go ahead and get to some advice if maybe you're a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, and I'll follow that up with some advice if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, and then we'll wrap things up with kind of a little bit of a summary here. Okay, so if you're a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be thinking about? What do you need to be planning for? What do you need to be paying attention to? Well, you're still way in control right now with the amount of inventory that's out there. Buyers are in control of this market. They have been for some time, really since 2023, since spring of 2023. And, the prices have softened a little bit, and you really do have a really great choice of properties out there. We're basically at a definitely a 2-year high in terms of the inventory, probably closer to a 10-year high, maybe even more than that. On the inventory front. So buyers are definitely in charge of this market. You got a little bit more competition now that we're getting into the heavier parts of season than you did maybe in November and December, but you also got more properties out there available. And I'll tell you, I really think there's going to be a pretty good season this year for property sales. We're not going to get that inventory under control anytime soon. So prices will continue to be soft. I don't know how much more they will go down. If anything, they may flatten off as we get a lot more of these sales under our belt heading into the spring. But you definitely got the ability to go out there and negotiate a good deal for yourself as a buyer right now. I will tell you one thing. There's, the properties that are priced right are selling fairly quickly, and they're selling fairly close to list price. If you look at the median list price to sale price ratio as a percentage, the average home right now is selling for 97.5% of the list price. If you have a home out there listed at $1 million and it's priced right, you can expect that home to sell for basically $1,097,000. So the properties that are being priced right are still moving, and they're still being very competitive out there. The problem is we've got a ton of overpriced listings out there, and they have to undergo several reductions in many cases before they get to that level where they're priced right. But once they're priced right, they are selling. Our list prices are less now than they were 12 months ago on average. And I think it's important as a buyer, you need to pay attention to the deal that you're getting really is not correlated to how much you're getting off of the list price. If that property is out there listed for $100,000 more than they should be listed for, and you get $100,000 off, you're still buying that property at market value. Just because you got a 10% off the list price doesn't necessarily mean you got a better deal. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So, it's more about looking at the numbers, looking at the comparables, and telling whether or not you've got yourself a good deal on any given property. And somebody like me, if you're working with me, I'm going to give you those numbers. And even if we pay full price for a listing, if that listing is priced at maybe 10% under where the comparables are, you're getting a good deal on that property, even though you're paying full price, full list price for it. So I wouldn't really correlate it too much with the list price. You need to just really pay attention to what that market value actually is and whether or not you're getting a decent deal based on that versus big discount off the list price. So I think that's important. But nevertheless, you got your choices. I think you can go out there and negotiate, especially if you've got a couple properties out there that you like. Pit one seller against the other. That's always a great thing to do, and especially if you're not really honed in on one particular property. If you've got a couple that you like, you can say, hey, Mr. Seller A, here's my offer. If you're not willing to take that, I'm going to take it over here, and give seller B the option of coming to my price. So I think that's a good way to negotiate. Just really be smart. I mean, we're not in a crashing market. There's nothing on the horizon that suggests that we are undergoing a crash. I know there's a ton of ridiculous YouTube videos out there with big flames in the background and clickbaity titles and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at these numbers every single month like I do, we're soft. The prices are soft, and you're getting a good deal out there. But if I've watched the pendings over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of buying activity in the market right now. I've worked 7 days a week for the last 3 weeks in a row, specifically with buyers. This last 7 days, I just looked back on my schedule. I showed 39 properties to 6 different buyer groups just in the last 7 days. So the buyers are here, and the market's going to continue to move. We just have an extraordinarily high amount of inventory, and because of that, the prices aren't going to be going up anytime soon. They're going to remain soft, but they're not going to crash. You're not going to see 20%, 30% reductions unless some massive macroeconomic disaster happens across the board. We're just not going to see that. There's not enough forced sellers in the market like a 2009 or a 2010 when all these banks had all this inventory and they needed to sell everything all at once. We don't have that. A lot of these sellers, they've got mortgages with 2%, 3% mortgage interest rates on there. It's, those folks aren't really excited to walk away from that if they're not going to get a reasonably decent number. So we're seeing reductions. That's a great thing for a buyer, but just be measured, be measured, and be smart about it. If you're interested in Cape Coral or anywhere in Southwest Florida, and I can help you with that, I would love to hear about your individual situation. We can talk about what you're targeting and how best to go about it. We'll put a purchasing plan together for you. and we'll target the right properties and get you the absolute best deal. So I would love to hear from you. Contact information is right there on the screen. Would call, text, or email me anytime. Would love to hear from you. But that's my advice for buyers. Continue to push the envelope out there. I think you just need to be smart, and you need to pay attention to market value versus list price, because those things are not always correlated. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. If that property's priced right, you still might be getting a really good deal, even though you're paying close to list price on it. But that's my advice for buyers in the Cape Coral real estate market here as it sits in February 2025. Okay, if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you, and what do you need to be paying attention to as we delve into and try to navigate this incredible amount of inventory on the market right now? Well, you need to be getting serious about what you're trying to do. If you're not serious about selling your property, you need to take it off the market. You need to just wait this out. We got to get some of this inventory off one way or the other before things are going to start to turn around for this real estate market. Again, just like I just got finished telling the buyers, I don't think we're imminently going off a cliff here in terms of the prices. There's a lot of buyers in this market. This activity is still really, really strong, but we've got unprecedented high levels of inventory out there, and we need to get rid of some of that before we can start to slow the bleed and kind of level these prices off a little bit. We're down a little bit over the course of the last 12 or so, 18 months, depending on the category that you're looking at. But we need to get those properties priced right. As long as you price your property right, you can expect to sell that property for pretty darn close to list price. Again, the median sale price to list price ratio is 97.5% right now. So it means take all of the properties, stack them up from the lowest sale to the highest sale, take the one in the middle, and that property on average is selling about 97.5% of the list price. Now, you might have to reduce your property 4, 5, 6 times before you get to the point where you've priced it right. But once you get there, there's plenty of buyers out there that's going to be looking at your property, and they're going to compete. They're going to compete for one another to try to get that property, and they're going to offer you something pretty close to list price. But the key is you got to list it right. Gone are the days when you can say, hey, let's push the market by 10% or something like that and try to squeeze every dollar out of this. You got to go in the opposite direction, especially right now with all this inventory out there. So price is the only thing that's going to move your property. Well, price, and you need to make sure it looks good, because again, there's a lot of competition out there. So make sure your property is in tip-top shape, especially that first 5 minutes when you walk through the front door. But I've got a ton of tricks that I can do to help sell your property, but I can't sell an overpriced listing. And I'm turning down listings at this point just because I don't need any extra overpriced listings right now. I got to make sure that we're priced accordingly to where we can actually sell it in this market and compete with all of those dozens of other properties that are out there that are in the same category. So you need to just be smart as a seller, and make a decision for yourself as to whether or not you really need to sell right now, or whether you can wait it out for, a year, 2, 3 years. If you're sitting on a really, really good interest rate, maybe you refinanced, or even you purchased in 2021 or something like that, and you got a 2 or 3 or 4% interest rate, it might be a good idea just to sit on the sidelines for a little bit and wait and see how this all plays out. And maybe things turn around. As long as we don't go into any big macroeconomic downturn, I think it'll eventually turn around. And it might be a year from now, it might be 2 years from now, I'm not really sure. Hopefully we can get the interest rates under 6%, maybe at the end of this year. Hopefully if the inflation numbers get under control, the Fed will reduce some basis rates and the 10-year Treasury will go down, and that in turn will cause the 30-year mortgages, the 15-year mortgages rates to go down. And that would be lovely to see, because that would help out. Because again, there's already a lot of buyers out there, but if we get this interest rate down, those same buyers can afford a little bit higher purchase price, and that will kind of stave off any further bleeding in the purchase prices. Will start to level out and eventually start to go back up. But long term, it's the first week of February, the sun's shining, and it's 80 degrees outside. There's a light breeze here. Everyone's going to love Southwest Florida continuing into the future. They want to come down here for the sunshine and the waterfront and all this beautiful weather that we have, especially in the winter. So long term, we're going to be just fine. There's going to be plenty of people moving to this area. I hear the complaints all the time from people that have lived here for a long time about how traffic is nuts and it's too crowded and there's too many people here and the wells are running dry in certain areas and things like that. There's a reason that all of that growth has happened over the course of the last 10 or so years, and it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. So just be smart as a seller. If you don't need to sell, take your property off the market. If you do need to sell, get it priced right. If you need help with that, I would love to hear from you. As long as I can price your property right, I would love to take your listing and get you every dollar that I possibly can for it. Call, text, or email me. Information's right there on the screen. It's also down in the description of this video. Would love to hear from you. I'd love to give you my opinion on what your numbers look like for your individual property. But that's my advice for sellers right now. You know, you're on the losing end of this right now, of the stick. You had a couple of years there where you were doing really, really well, and now it's the buyer's turn to have a little more control in this real estate market. But all is not lost. Don't panic. Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you and talk to you about your property. All right, so if I'm going to just sum up the Cape Coral real estate market as it sits right here in the first week of February 2025, I'm going to say I'm continuing to be cautiously optimistic. We had an unexpected jump. I will admit that I did not see this spike in inventory coming this soon. I thought we were going to go up a little bit, but that jump in overall inventory for residential properties from December to January was unexpectedly high, and we soared up past the high point of last year. We had been doing really well since basically spring of last year in terms of heading in the right direction on inventory. The inventory was coming down. That was good news because we just had way too much inventory out there. The supply side was way too high, and we were making some progress, and it turns out that progress being made was a little bit artificial because folks were taking their property off the market in the late spring and into the summer months, and those folks had every intention of putting that property back on the market all at once after we got past the first of the year. So we're in it right now. We had the big spike in inventory. You know, prices are soft. You, as a seller, you need to be a little bit more aggressive right now. As a buyer, you've got your higher amount of choices out there, and you negotiate a little bit better. The prices, or the properties that are priced right, are still selling rather quickly and close to list price. That's very important to keep in mind. There's still a lot of buying activity out there. We just continue to have way too much, way too many overpriced listings on the market, and we need to get those either under control or we need to get them off the market because we can't just let that sit out there. We really have an inventory issue that we need to get under control. But I know I'm the busiest I've ever been in my career the last 4 weeks. It's been the craziest that I can remember it. I think part of that is due to you guys out there calling and emailing me from my YouTube videos, and I thank you. I'm absolutely appreciative of every single one of you. But I also think that it's because we're past the election, we're past the first of the year. People are feeling a little more optimistic about the economy here, at least in Southwest Florida, and they are choosing to get into this market right now. So number of sales are going to be going up as we get into February, March, April. I think we're going to do even better this year than we did last year, and we're going to have a really strong season. Now, the issue with that, though, is we still have way too many properties on the market, and I don't think we're going to sell enough to get that under control this year. Hopefully, interest rates come back down as we get towards the end of the year. They're not going anywhere probably until middle of this year. With inflation concerns the way they are, if we get these inflation projections under control and that 10-year treasury comes down a little bit, then maybe the 15, 30-year mortgage rates will start to fall, and hopefully by fourth quarter of this year, maybe we can even get back under 6%. I know there's political pressure to have that happen, but the powers that be are going to do what they're going to do. And if the 10-year treasury remains high, the mortgage rates will continue to remain high. But just make sure you tune into these videos every single month, because I'm going to give you the real talk on how it exactly is. You're going to see the numbers that I put out every single month. Again, I don't think it's time to panic by any stretch of the imagination. We're still going to have a pretty good buying season this year. There's still plenty of people that want to buy here in Southwest Florida. There's just a lot of folks that are selling their properties right now, and they really need to either get that thing priced seriously, or they need to get it off the market so we can go into some equilibrium. And we haven't really seen too much equilibrium in this real estate market in the last 10 years. We had a really heavy seller's market for a number of years, and now we've got a pretty decent buyer's market as well. So If I can help you with anything, whether it's buying or selling a property, I would love to hear from you. Again, my contact information's been on the screen there. It's also down in the description of this video. Call, text, or email me. Would love to hear from you. Love to chat with you. Even if you're not maybe ready to pull the trigger just quite yet, I'd love to talk about your individual situation and give you some advice. So thank you so much for being here. I know these are longer videos, and I appreciate every second of your time that you spend watching these. Make sure you're subscribed to this, because again, in addition to these monthly videos, I'm doing the weekly videos on just really good informational topics and really cool properties sometimes. I did a really cool 2.5 acre big riverfront property, I think last week, that was really cool. So make sure you subscribe so you can see those videos when they come out every single month. Again, thank you so much for being here. If I can do anything for you, definitely reach out. But we'll see you on the next video here in just a few days. I'll have the next one.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.